Hi folks, we're back and we're cutting through the matrix. I can remember years ago, the Foreign Affairs magazine, which is the exoteric, it's not the esoteric, but exoteric magazine put out by the Council on Foreign Relations. They do give you a lot of truth in it. They'll tell you what they're doing next sometimes, or big plans that they have. And they're never wrong as to what they're working on and what they want to achieve. You always see that they achieve their goals. And it was many, many years ago, they actually talked about running around the American Constitution. It was just an old fogey that kept standing up, and they had to keep trying to go straight through it. And what the guy said, this reporter of the CFR said, he says, instead of attacking it in the old-fashioned way, head on, basically, through the court systems and so on, and Supreme Court, he said, we'll have to go around it. And that's what they've done. Again, another big superstructure of laws until it's buried and superseded, basically, in a sense, by all the new ones that they just built, like massive spider webs, layer upon layer upon layer spider webs. And that's the tricks that they use across the world in every country to get around constitutions. And when they're caught at it, of course, they always deny it, and they always come up with conspiracy theory, something which they put out themselves to mock people who catch on to what's happening. And I can remember in 2005, on Canadian television, the Council on Foreign Relations came out as its own spokesman, basically. Generally, you'll see Council on Foreign Relations members advising someone, little clips at the bottom of the TV news. But seldom do they ever come out as a group themselves, speaking on their own behalf. And they did this time, and it was about the signing of the part of the integration for the North American Union. They were all for it. They drafted it up, they said, and I think Mr. Manning was the spokesman for Canada at that time. He used to be second in command of Canada next to Martin at one point, I think. Anyway, they came out on their own and said this has got to be done. And they said it was modeled along the European guidelines and how good it would be for Canada and so on. And so a big trading bloc that would compete with not only China, but Europe as well. And once that came out, there was a bit of a murmur amongst Canadians. And it takes a lot to get Canadians murmuring about anything. But they noticed the murmur, and they started to quieten it down afterwards. But the agreement was signed, and they said at the time that, and it was Bush and Paul Martin and Fox that signed it at that time at Waco, I think it was. And they said they would sign agreements up to 2010. They'd be complete by 2010. Well, they have been signing it every year. It's just they haven't been telling the general public what they're signing. And they have a whole bunch of terms, very much like they use the same techniques because they run the United Nations, but as the United Nations does itself, because the United Nations, when they were going on about sustainable development and Agenda 21, once the public caught on to what they're up to, they kept changing the names of it. So it's the same with American Union. There's a whole bunch of different terms they use, but they all mean union, basically, because that's the whole plan. Anyway, WikiLeaks came out with some of this stuff too. And this article here says WikiLeaks North American Initiative is no theory. It's a document posted online by WikiLeaks reveals there were strategy discussions regarding the adoption of a North American Union called the North American Initiative in this case. See, that's how so many different terms for the same thing at the ambassadorial level in the United States government. The concept of a North American Union largely has been ridiculed by many in government and the media. The Wikipedia entry on North American Union calls it a theoretical economic union that has been the subject of various conspiracy theories. That's Wikipedia. And of course they run Wikipedia. Try to get something up there that they don't want and it's pulled off immediately. Anyway, it says, however, WorldNet Daily put up an extensive library of reports that documents progress towards the idea. And then when you scroll down, it says the WikiLeaks document, not Wikipedia, but WikiLeaks document was uncovered by investigators with Americans for Legal Immigration. And the organization reports they appear to confirm an incremental and covert plan within the highest levels of the American and Canadian governments to accomplish deeper North American integration while keeping most average citizens in the dark and bypassing the constitutions of the existing three sovereign nations of America, Canada, and Mexico. ALAPAC spokesman William Geen told World Night Daily, "This is the smoking gun. This is not conjecture. This is a high-ranking member of the U.S. government who created this document." Actually, it was a whole pile of them that worked on this, all from the Council on Foreign Relations, because they admitted on the 2005 TV broadcast that they drafted it up for the leaders to sign. A private organization does this for all of you, and they get what they want. It says a document from a secret 2005 U.S. Embassy cable from Ottawa, signed by then Ambassador Paul Cellucci, states, "An incremental and pragmatic package of tasks for a new North American initiative will likely gain the most support amongst Canadian policymakers. Our research leads us to conclude that such a package should tackle both security and prosperity goals." And that's how they're trying to sell it to the public. Oh, security, oh, 9/11, oh. And prosperity, everybody loves that word, prosperity, right? This fits with the recommendations of Canadian economists who have assessed the options for continental integration. While in principle many of them support more ambitious integration goals, like a customs union, single market and/or single currency, most believe the incremental approach is most appropriate at this time, and all agree that it helps pave the way to these goals if and when North Americans choose to pursue them. So that was from the Ambassador Paul Cellucci. In a document released April 28th, Cellucci expounds upon a well-researched and refined plan to mostly replace the existing borders of sovereign nations with some kind of privacy-invading biometric security perimeter, where the borders of the nations will still stand, but information will be exchanged on all citizens in the nations, thus creating a super-state law enforcement effort to manage security, according to ALAPAC. Well, that's happened already. We've had that for a few years. That was announced on Canadian news maybe 2-3 years ago, maybe 4, that they were exchanging all data of all their citizens with each other already. ALAPAC's report said the document specifically states that Cellucci and his fellow conspirators fear the U.S. could wake up and secure the borders against contagious diseases and terrorism. He points out that financial interests in Canada fear U.S. attempts to protect citizens from terrorism or pandemics and could interfere with some financial interests in Canada. The document goes on to say, even with the zero tariffs, and that was part of the whole deal they mentioned in 2005, they both share, the three of the countries would share all the incoming tariffs from abroad, import duties. Our land borders have strong commercial effects. Some of these effects are positive, such as law enforcement and data gathering, so our governments may always want to keep some kind of land border in place. The risk that business will be obstructed at the border by discretionary U.S. actions, such as measures to defend against terrorism or infectious disease, in addition to growing congestion, have become major risks to the economy, inhibiting investment in Canada. According to ALAPAC, here we have a man who has sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America and the people who pay his exorbitant salary and expenses with their hard-earned taxes, and is taking the side of financial interests that cannot be bothered by dead Americans killed by Mexican flu pandemics and other diseases, rampaging armies of illegal alien marauders, or the lethal terrorists amongst them. The organization warned the document is very clear about moving slowly and incrementally and not attempting to arouse public suspicions by making a big move all at once. The exact same technique they use with the European Union folk by the same people, the same organization. And this goes on for quite a bit, this article here. I'll put it up at cuttingthroughthematrix.com at the end of the broadcast. But it's no simple maybe or anything like that. It's actually been integrating for quite some time on many different levels, and the public have been kept in the dark, and that's the intention of it. And one day you'll wake up and it'll be just like the European Union. Suddenly you've got a parliament that's all standing for you, and away it goes. And then you get out your own little Rompuy character who'll be a little dictator, and there you are.